Pistyll Rhaeadr is the most enchanting waterfall in the country, probably in Britain. It's situated on the Berwyn Mountains just inside Wales, and at 240 feet it is Britain's tallest single drop waterfall. It's actually higher than Niagara Falls, but without the volume. And for millennia this location has been revered in prehistoric folklore as one of their most sacred locations, and often called the Druid's Bowl. Rhaeadr actually means the water of Rhea, and Rhea was the mother of Zeus and grandmother of Hercules, and she became the patron saint of Roman soldiers.
Slow down.
And where the Rhaeadr River begins, there was a Roman fort and settlement. And along with standing stones now named after Gwyn ap Nudd, the king of the fairy folk and ruler of the Welsh overworld, and various Iron Age forts on top of the Berwyn Mountains, including viewpoints connected with King Arthur, it's not surprising the village and countryside and the waterfall are alive with ancient legends and myths, including giants. Ancient stories always seem to begin with giants, and below the waterfall are two great stones called Fodogga, I think. And there's also two giants which have turned to stone in the area close by. I probably have to apologise for my Welsh pronunciation. The English is bad enough. And we know that the Celtic people settled in this part of Wales, as did the Vikings. The first intermarried settled, bringing with them the skills in metalwork. Obviously the second came to rape, pillage and plunder. But both are much taller and bigger built than the small dark descendants of the Iberians and indigenous populations, and could have been thought of giants in comparison, I guess. Though around 2000 years BC, pre-Celtic people had already settled in Wales, alleged to be called the Iberians. Probably could say came from Spain, which was also called the Iberian Peninsula. Above the falls is a moor of graves, and originally people settled on the high ground above the dense forests, and the signs of early cultures can be seen, including freshwater wells used by travellers. And as the climate changed, the people moved into the valleys and away from the mountains, leaving behind signs of their lives, rituals and beliefs. There's a small stone circle called Ross y Bideau above the waterfall, with its avenue facing the midsummer rising sun, which may have had many varied uses. And we now know that these ancient people possessed more advanced technologies and mathematical understanding than we realised previously. They had a strong knowledge of star systems and the passage of time. The people of the Beryns knew how to live with spiritual connectedness to the land. Their ceremonies and rituals were about giving thanks for the fertility of the land, and they had awareness of the unseen forces of the land and the seasons. And we also know that the ancient people revered both landscape, the sun and the moon. The land was a fertile mother, and the matron was perceived as a sacred landscape which they worshipped. Our ancient ancestors also know how to use the stars as they slowly moved across the sky, allowing them to pinpoint time with great accuracy, like a library of knowledge. Then you have dragon lines of earth energy, and they often follow rivers as the movement of the water itself creates changes in the magnetic field. The water creates negative ions and can change the way your body reacts, and I'm sure our ancestors knew this. And of course the fairy folk were believed to play here beneath the mossy green banks and stones, and in the dappled shadows of the trees. The water on a sunny day is said to glisten with their shining wings. And of course here be dragons. How could there not be in Wales? And you have the Gwyber of Rhaeadr above the waterfall, and past a little stone circle is a lake. And the story goes that in this lake there lived a giant serpent with wings, who every few days would fly down the valley to the villages and seize the children, women and livestock, taking them back to the lake to devour them. So the village elders decide to ask the old wise woman of the woods to help, and the leaders set off over the mountain the next day to reach her. And when she heard the horrifying story, she said she would sleep on it, and the next morning the witch came up with a subtle plan. But when the villagers got home, they went straight to the blacksmith, put their plan into action. They worked through the night to make 3 enormous spike collars, while the women of the village stitched all the linen they could find to make a huge sheet and dyed it red, blood red. Now as soon as all the work was complete, the whole village set off to a field at the foot of a mountain. No time for sleep. Now this field had a sacred standing stone in the centre of it, but the men dropped the 3 stake collars over the ancient standing stone and wrapped it all in the red linen. Then they laid firewood all round the stone in a circle and waited. After a few hours, a warning rang out. The Gwyber was on his way down the river, so the villagers lit the fire and hid, and the flames from the fire surrounding the stone attracted the dragon to it as it approached, and the stupid dragon thought it was seeing a rival dragon invading its territory, and roared as it attacked. As the enormous beast threw itself at its suspected rival, Gwyber speared its breasts on the hidden spikes, which drove it into a worse fury, thinking it had been countered by its supposed rival, and attacked again and again and again, and each time the spikes drove deeper and deeper until the dragon was bleeding profusely from the wounds, and gradually it grew weaker and weaker until it collapsed and died at the foot of the pillar. So with the help of the wise woman, the villagers outwitted the Gwyber, and once more the village was safe. Now that very same stone pillar is still there today on private land, and with the farmer's permission you can walk round the edge of the field and touch the great stone. It's called the Pillar Cotch, the red pillar, and may have stood there as a route marker, grave marker, river crossing marker, or a sentinel to those buried in the adjacent tumuli for over 5,000 years.